Welcome to the Lost in Transit podcast. I'm your host, Spud Groshong. So, it was a few months ago I had this idea that, well, there's tons of travel podcasts out there. And I figured I would reach out to some hosts and see if they wanted to cross-promote podcasts. So, this week on the podcast, I have Travis Timmons. Travis is the host of a podcast called So How Was the Trip? Travis is a traveler, a father, a husband. And in this episode, you'll hear him talk about all of that and some travel stuff. Hope you enjoy the conversation. Welcome to Lost in Transit podcast. I'm your host, Spud Groshong. Today on the show, I have Travis Timmons, is the host of So How Was the Trip podcast. Welcome to the show, Travis.
Thanks, Spud. It's good to be here, man.
It's great to have you. So I see on your Instagram, there's a little tagline that says, a podcast dedicated to telling travel stories for regular people. Who's a regular person?
That's it. The idea, or maybe the inspiration, which is probably a slightly generous term behind it, is that you go on vacation, you come home, your friends ask, how was the trip? And you kind of say awesome or give an anecdote or a story, but nobody really gets a full inclusive account of what your trip or your travel was like. So that's kind of the inspiration behind the travel. It tends to be everything from folks like you that have an online presence that do travel, to some friends of ours, to I also drive for Uber and work in sales, and like people I just kind of run into. I'm like, hey, do you want to? It's a really weird proposition to ask someone if they want to be on a podcast. But if they start talking about a trip, I'm like, hey, this is kind of dumb, but you want to tell that story. So it's everything from friends, family, people we reach out to online, people I run into. But it's just kind of this all-inclusive thought that nobody really gets a full account of what somebody's trip or vacation, or maybe lifestyle, if they do more of a nomadic thing. Nobody really gets that full account of what somebody's travel is unless you sit down and like, hey, let's take an hour and just talk about it.
Oh yeah, I dig that a lot. I can't count the number of times I've sat in a hostel somewhere meeting brand new people and just been like, let's talk about our trips. And it's been killer every time.
That, and look, it feels a little self-indulgent to be like, okay, yeah, like you sit there for 30 minutes and I'm going to tell you about what we did. And on a platform like this, it's okay. And it's socially acceptable to talk about yourself or what you've done for 30, 40 minutes.
Absolutely. I do it with my family. I do it with my friends. I do it with literally everybody. It's the one topic that I actually enjoy talking to anybody about. And most people have an input, so it's kind of fun.
Yeah, that, and I also try to find things to do I find things to do rather than just sitting and watching TV when I'm done with everything for the night. So something that's kind of life-giving, something that puts me in the spot to meet some cool and interesting people. So that's really what it's been. It's a fun project to, as weird as it sounds, to, kind of make new friends or create relationships with like-minded people and just gather some really cool stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you met anybody that like might have been somebody you reached out to on the internet to interview?
Well, I've met some friends of friends that I didn't otherwise know or wouldn't have otherwise met. I haven't we've done, I think, 39 episodes.
Okay.
And of that 39, probably a dozen have been people that I just kind of reached out to on Instagram or online.
Okay.
Of those, I don't actually think there's anybody I've met.
Oh, okay.
No, there's not. Yeah.
Well, next time I'm in Texas, we'll have to.
There you go,
coffee.
man. Yeah, for sure. Oh, yeah, it's just kind of happenstance and we've been doing this for, I guess, 10 months or something like that. So as time goes and we continue to bounce around the globe, hopefully we'll run into somebody.
Oh yeah, it's a small world once you start moving.
Yeah.
Sweet. All right, well, let's bust into this 10 questions really quick.
Let's go.
Okay, so
I would also say to kind of finish that last answer that one of our self-deprecating jokes that we always make is that like it's we get around and we travel and do as much as we can. We're My wife and I are mid-30s. We have two kids under 5. We live in the suburbs. We drive a van. There's nothing special or wonderful about us or glamorous, but that's kind of our niche is just like, hey, this is us. We're not really that cool or edgy, but we try to experience life in cool ways and reach out and connect with people that feel the same way. So when you say regular people, that's kind of the joke of being vanilla and living in the suburbs in our stage of life is part of that too.
Oh, I totally get that. And it seems like that's, even though it's not edgy or whatever, it seems like it's more than a lot of people do who do live in the suburbs and drive a van and have kids.
Yeah.
More than my friends that I know that have kids and live in the suburbs.
Yeah.
So I totally get that. And you just were on a trip, right? You just went to Oregon and you just went to Australia. So you're doing stuff.
We've had a nice little run. I mean, yeah, we did just under 2 weeks in Australia at the beginning of June. And then I got home and left my wife with the kids for 5 days and went to the Oregon coast to stay with a friend. So yeah, we had a nice little run. And in the last 15 months, we've done, it feels weird talking about, but hey, you asked. So we've done Norway, Amsterdam, Australia. We did Melbourne and then Sydney for a one night stopover. Northern Italy, Colorado a couple times, actually Oregon 3 times. Oregon's one of our favorite places to go to, especially when you live in a place like Texas in the summertime. You find places that aren't quite so hot and humid to go to. Then Utah, San Diego twice. Everything west. We've kind of given up on the East Coast.
I never really was the biggest fan of the East Coast.
I mean, it's fine. I lived in DC for a time. Like it's fine, but you can kind of have everything east of Colorado, and I'm okay.
Yeah, I totally get that.
But no, to your point though, yeah, we've traveled a fair amount, and that's what we really spend all of or most of our disposable income on. We've kind of set up our jobs in a way where we can get away pretty easily, and that took some time to figure out. But yeah, that's our story. And sometimes we take the kids, sometimes we don't.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah, we probably slightly prefer to go without the kids, but we also can't shake them loose every time. We can't overuse the grandma card to babysit while we go somewhere. And I don't throw stones at the take the kids family travel folks, but I don't know. Our kids are a bit young. They're 3 and 5 now, so we can do a little bit more with them. But up until really the last 6 months, there's not a lot that we've been able to or wanted to do with them. And to that point a little bit, all they want to do is go jump in a pool or go to a swing set. We don't need to fly to Colorado to go to a playground, if you know what I mean.
Or Italy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that international travel with kids is just something that it's just not our thing.
Sure.
Yet. We'll get there, but not yet.
I had a conversation with my sister this morning about she had taken my niece to Chicago for the first time, and she's getting ready to want to go to a lot of places, and she's like 10, and I'm like, get her a passport. I'll buy her first international plane ticket.
Well, 10's right in the wheelhouse, I think. I've got a 9-year-old niece that would be a blast, but our kids just aren't there yet.
Sure. I totally get that. All right, let's bust into these 10 questions.
Let's do it.
So, question 1. If you were given $5,000 and had a plane ticket waiting at the airport, but had to leave right now, where would you go?
Ticket for just me? See, we just talked about I live in a cul-de-sac, drive a van, and have responsibilities. So my first thought, I'm like, what am I going to do with my wife and kids? So the one place I want to go that I haven't been to, just me, probably Southeast Asia. I've got a buddy that lives in Thailand that I'd go visit, and we hang out with him for a couple weeks. I don't even think I need $5,000, but I'd bounce around Southeast Asia.
That would be a lot of money in Southeast Asia.
Yeah. First thought, it's funny, and my first thought is one, somewhere I haven't been, and then two, even though you just said you're giving me free money, my first thought was to get really practical. Like, oh, who can I stay with for free? That's not what the question was.
Yeah, absolutely not. But I approve practicality.
Yeah. Yeah, I
It's
haven't been to
great.
Southeast Asia, and I need to.
It's lovely.
Yeah.
It's probably my favorite place to go.
Yeah. I hear a bunch of people say that. I'd probably go to Thailand and then, yeah, Thailand and Vietnam.
I took my girlfriend to Southeast Asia for her first international trip, and she became a travel addict immediately. We went on like 8 trips last year.
Nice.
It's terrible. Um,
Yeah.
so have you ever been stranded anywhere? This is like my favorite question because people's version of stranded is so different.
Nothing extreme. The first thought that I have is uh, my wife and I on our first international trip. We were very stereotypical. We were in Paris. We got stuck on a train going the wrong way, and it was about 20 minutes before we realized that it was going the wrong way. So we got stuck in a pretty crappy part of Paris and had to wait about 30 minutes for the train going back the other way. That doesn't really count. The only other thought that I have, when I lived in DC, I was right out of school and went to went to happy hour after work, and it's kind of a really shameful story, but it happened. I fell asleep on the train, woke up all the way at the end of the red line, way out in God, where was that? Yeah, way out in Prince George's County, Maryland, and I was 23, living paycheck to paycheck. I had about $40 in my bank account, and this was 2005 or six, pre Uber,
Sure.
and I don't even know if I had a credit card that had any room on it. I was so broke. So it was about a $60 cab ride to get back home after I got drunk and fell asleep on the train. And I had this cabbie. I just got in a cab knowing the whole time I wasn't going to be able to pay for it. This
Oh,
isn't on a trip, but it's like if you talk about being stranded or being stuck, that's probably the first thing that comes to mind.
sure.
So
That to me is a stranded
I
story.
I'm a bad person for doing this, but I didn't have the money. I just got in the cab knowing I couldn't pay for it. And I got, and it was like $62. And I did not have $62 to my name as a 23-year-old. And I just told the guys like, hey, follow me to the ATM. I'll get you. And then I just split and took off like an absolute loser.
That's okay though.
Poor
I'm sure
guy's
we've all
probably got
done it.
like 5 kids. Yeah. Poor guy's probably got 5 kids. He's supporting, moved from Pakistan to immigrate to the US. And I'm just like, I don't know,
You're a kid
23
who
year
needed
old
to get
guy
home.
that goes and gets drunk. Yeah, I guess that's the one time I would say was stranded internationally. There's not been, or on the road, there's not been anything that is super extreme. I mean, outside of taking a train going the wrong way or being stuck in an airport or missing a flight, nothing too crazy.
Sure. Okay. Um.
Just being a bad person at home.
Hey,
That's
it
okay.
doesn't make you a bad person. I feel like everyone's done something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh.
It's funny. That was 13 years ago. I still feel bad. I mean, anyway, uh,
It definitely sounds like you still feel bad about
I do. Yeah. Um, but anyway, next question.
it. Okay. Uh. What was your worst trip? As
Worst
simple
trip,
as that.
actually, speaking of taking the kids, the first trip that we took with the kids, we went to Colorado last summer, and it was bad for two reasons. One, because they were awful and they just weren't quite ready for it. Two, we'd been looking around a little bit, trying to figure out where we want to put roots down. We've really just chased the next job or chased economic opportunity to a bunch of places. And we finally are at a point where like, okay, where do we want to live? I want to live somewhere I love. And we narrowed down Colorado Springs for whatever reason. We're like, you know what? My wife had been there once or twice. I had never been to Colorado Springs. We're like, let's go to Colorado Springs. Let's take the kids. Like, let's really look around and see if this is a place that we could put roots down. And first thing, we were very disappointed with Colorado Springs. There's a bunch of really cool stuff to go and do and explore. the whole town felt very suburban, which again, that's fine. And it just felt a little dated. We were disappointed with the place. Our kids were just disasters, which it was our fault. We had an expectation that we could do all of the things that we wanted to normally do and just bring them along and think, all right, well, we'll stop and we'll go back to the hotel or back to the Airbnb and catch a nap. But it didn't work. I mean, everything we had planned fell through. We ended up, yeah, it was just bad all the way around. Like everything we wanted to do, we couldn't do. Our kids were pretty whiny. There was one night so we had our full list of things to do. None of them worked out. We thought like, all right, let's just go get a decent dinner. So we went to this place that had it's a really, I forget what it's called, but a really cool spot, nice outdoor area where you sit and eat, great craft cocktail list, good food. And we pulled up and our 4-year-old fell asleep maybe 10 minutes before we got there. And the way that she was, if you wake her up in the middle of a nap, she's a nightmare. So we thought, okay, she's not going to sleep that long in the car. Let's just wait. So we sat there and watched this restaurant go from 1 or 2 people sitting at the outdoor and indoor tables to being completely full while she was still sleeping. So we punted on that. We ended up going to depressing Panera Bread and getting like mac and cheese and a PB&J. And then we're like, all right, well, we can still get out to Pikes Peak before sunset. Let's just go drive up there and watch the sunset. Well, anyway, that closed at 7 and we were an hour away. That didn't work out. And then I was like, oh, let's go out to the Painted Mines in Peyton. I'm like, that'll be fun. That ended up being, I thought we were 30 minutes away. We were about an hour and 10 minutes away. That didn't work out. So we actually ended up, and all the girls wanted to do was go back and like watch TV at a hotel because they can flip through channels rather than, I don't know. They've never seen anything other than Netflix and Amazon. So the idea that you can just flip through cable was life changing to them. But yeah, man, like I could keep going, but it basically was like everything that we had planned didn't work out. And our kids just weren't quite ready to go on vacation and be active. And our expectations were off because we didn't know any better. But I would say that was the worst one we've ever taken. Actually, no, I've got another one. It's funny. On my honeymoon, for Christ's sake.
Oh, Lord.
We went to Mexico and I got sick 2 days into my honeymoon. Like really sick.
That doesn't sound good.
No, and it's also, you know, I mean, I dated my wife for a little bit before we got married, but there's still a bit of, you're not quite as willing to be as vulnerable as you should be until you get married and live together or start to create a life together. So it was like I was slingshotted right into like just my stomach exploding in every direction and things coming out of me that smell like really, really bad. I'm like, hey, babe, love you. And then you also do punt on your honeymoon and like throw in the towel, like, all right, can we please go home? So I didn't say it. And at one point, my wife, Laura, just said, do you want to just call the airline and try to go home? Like before she could finish that sentence, I was like, yes, let's go home. Yeah, that's probably actually the worst.
Yeah, that sounds worse than Colorado Springs with the kids.
Yeah, you don't get your honeymoon back.
No, you can take another trip. You know what I mean? That's the one. I get that.
That's it.
All right, next question. Is there anywhere you've been that you'd love to go back to, and why?
Well, there's a little bit of recency bias behind this question, but maybe my favorite city or the most underrated city in the world, in my opinion, is Melbourne, Australia, where we just got back from. Ah, God, I love it. And part of the reason is because the first place I ever went, I did a summer abroad there back in college when I'd never been anywhere. And it's just special. So going back there, and it's just special and nostalgic, and I love it.
I agree. It's a completely special place to me too. I think it's wonderful. I think it's it's wonderful. And like I said, we just got back, so if you ask me in a few months, my answer might be a little bit different. But there was this
thought in my head of how great it was back when I was 20 and dumb and naive. And at the time, anywhere would have been fun. But then we went back, and it was about 4 days in, my wife looked at me and she's like, I think this is the best trip we've ever taken.
Oh, and that's great.
Anyway, I love that. I just love that place so much.
Of course. Question, what is this, 5? If you could travel with one person for a week and then never see or hear from them again, who would you choose?
Oh, that's good.
And they can be alive or dead.
Okay. The narcissistic part of me wanted to say my past self or my future self.
Oh.
Yeah, I'd like to travel with my past self and be like, hey man, it's going to be okay. Just want you to know that. Like, things are going to work out all right. And someone who's not me, it's hard for me to think outside of myself sometimes, but I'd honestly like to just travel with a dead relative. Like right now, I take it back. I figured it out. I rambled for a couple minutes. I figured it out. My Uncle Doug, who was the guy that just kind of showed up for me in every area of my life growing up. That one example of my Uncle Doug and just being super selfless is that when I was 11 years old, I started a lawn mowing business. I didn't have a lawnmower. I couldn't drive, but I was like, one of our neighbors wanted me to mow his grass. And I just, yeah, I'll do that. So I found a lawnmower, started mowing his grass. Then somebody else hired me, and somebody else. So every Saturday, my Uncle Doug, who worked in a factory and had an awful job, quite frankly, would get up, bring his truck, help me load up a lawnmower and trimmer and go mow grass with me and let me keep every dime that I made for probably 3 or 4 summers in a row. And that's one small example of all the things that he did. I feel like throughout my entire childhood, there was never anything that I could ask of him that he would say no to. My Uncle Doug is a guy that there's nothing that I ever could have asked of him that I feel like he would have said no to. He's also the kind of guy that talks about a lot of great plans and never actually does them as it pertains to living life and doing things and experiences. He's never, well, he died a couple years ago, but he never went anywhere. And he always talked about like, oh, we should do this together. We should do that. Or I'd have these ideas. And as we got closer to the time to actually do it, he would always come up with some sort of an excuse or like, I don't have any money right now. Or there was always something that kept him from going. And if I could get a week back with Uncle Doug and go let him see something as simple as the Rocky Mountains or go to the coast and just see the ocean, that's who it would be. Just to get a week back with Uncle Doug to do the thing that he and I dreamed about, but never actually got to do.
I love that. That's the most meaningful answer I think I've ever gotten to that question.
Well, good.
So question 6, what is your biggest fear while traveling?
I think it's just because we're usually away from our kids, something happens to our kids. That's it.
Yeah,
as far as us, we'll be okay. But if we're like being in Australia, for example, we were 9,000 miles away from our kids.
Yeah. It's got to be kind of hard.
And I'm maybe a little dead inside. So it's not something that I really think about a whole lot. Or I just think, look, everything's going to be okay. And there's not, the illusion of control is gone as far as we're concerned. The illusion of control isn't something that we're delusional about. But like, we know that something can happen at any time. There's nothing that we can do about it. But the idea that you're not there is probably the one thing that I would say a fear, that is a fear. And my wife is probably a better parent than I am. So she feels that a little bit more than I do. But that's the one thing that, because we do travel without them at least a few times a year, it's just that something happens and you're away and you can't get back.
It's understandable for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So next question, planes, trains, or automobiles? How do you prefer to travel?
Planes. we never go on road trips. I feel like, I don't know why we don't. Like, we'll drive to New Orleans or pop over to Austin, but I feel like every time that we get in a car, we're like, oh, people do this. Like, but planes. Maybe it's because where we live, it's hot, flat, and crowded, and to get anywhere awesome or get to where things are naturally beautiful, we gotta hop on a plane.
Okay. I totally get that. What is the strangest thing you've ever tasted? In all of my travels, I've had all kinds of weird shit. Horse. I'm sure I ate dog in China. There's gotta be something strange. We've all tried.
Yeah, I've had kangaroo fillet.
Oh, it's
delicious. I don't know. That's not bad. Yeah, there was a little pub in Fitzroy in Melbourne that we had. They do a chicken parm with kangaroo fillet on top, like kangaroo fillet diced up. And anyway, that's the one thing. I don't know how exotic that is. I guess that counts.
I mean, for Americans, it's very exotic.
Yeah, yeah. Other than that, actually, have had times where we're just trusting people, and they're like, "Oh, you can eat this," whether if you're on a trail and it's berries or some sort of indigenous fruit or something. They're like, "Oh, here, just have this," and you just blindly trust people, not knowing what it is. I guess the last time that was the case, we were in El Salvador, actually on a trip drilling wells for villages to get clean water, and the people that we were with didn't really speak English, and they would just hand us stuff to eat. We're like, yeah, we'll try that, and not knowing what it is. But yeah, I'd say either kangaroo or being in remote villages of El Salvador and just not really having any idea what we're eating.
Okay.
That, and I would say back to that El Salvador story, their stomachs are used to and accustomed to digesting things that we just can't all that well. So being in El Salvador where the infrastructure is not great, and then just blindly obliging to our host, like, hey, yeah, not knowing what we're eating.
Yeah, I ran into that in India. I ate a lot of things that, well, it wasn't good for me. But everybody else was fine with it.
Yeah, and that's the other thing about that El Salvador. Like, we would go out to a drill site and work, and they would do lunch. Like, the village would give us lunch, and they would just fry everything to kill all the bacteria for the most part. But they're your host, and they're making you, like, they're killing the chicken to give to you for lunch, and it's a big deal. And you want to oblige and be respectful, but you also want to know what you're eating and not.
Oh, absolutely.
Not have to make like a 3-hour drive to San Salvador to get to a hospital.
Oh, that sounds terrible.
But yeah, that would be it. Those two.
If you were to sit down on a plane right now, pop in your headphones, what would be the first thing you listen to?
Ooh. There is actually a charming, God, I don't even know his name. Who is that? I'm a little behind on it. It's a podcast called The Glass With. He's like a sommelier and wine expert that just shares a glass of wine with people. So they talk about the wine. Ollie Smith is the guy's name. Yeah, A Glass with Ollie Smith. And they bring an interesting wine. They talk about the bottle. They talk about stories regarding food, wine, life, depending on what that person's into. That's what I'd throw on right now. I've got about 6 of those to catch up on. And he is the most, God, what's the best way to say it? Like the most stereotypical British guy that says these like super enthusiastic, British colloquialisms. So that would be a Glass With podcast. Either that or, Malcolm Gladwell's Revisionist History's got a new season that I've got to catch up on. But I would say those two, what I'd listen to right now.
Awesome. Okay. And the last question is, have you ever been anywhere that turned out to be completely different than you expected? And if so, how?
Yeah. Speaking of that, London. It was my first international trip. And, yeah, we did Paris, London, and Normandy. And it's just kind of I grew up in a small town in the Midwest, and that was one of the few places that I knew about and thought about and dreamed like, oh, I'd love to go to London. And, didn't really like it that much. Like it just, yeah, it feels blasphemous to say, but we were super disappointed with London. Um, and then the other, I would say, getting back to that El Salvador story, you kind of have pity on people that live in remote villages that don't have access to clean water and don't have heating or air conditioning and live in a house with a dirt floor. But dude, they were happier than us. Like they truly were happier than I was. And there's nothing about their material possessions that would suggest that from a Western perspective. I mean, we would be doing work and in the middle of it, someone would start a game of tag or find a soccer ball to kick around. And it's like grown men who are 50 years old would just start playing tag. And I went there thinking like I was doing some wonderful humanitarian effort, and it was a good thing. But yeah, dude, it surprised me. Like those guys are happy. Their lifestyle is so much different than ours. And that was probably the hardest reentry I've ever had. And I did not expect that at all. But coming back to the US and just especially in a place like Texas where consumption wins the day and everyone wants the new, biggest, most expensive, gaudy thing, it really surprised me how hard it was coming back to Houston from El Salvador. And like for the first month, I was like, I kind of wish I was still in El Salvador. Yeah, I would say that there was a pure joy in adults, like kids and adults. Normally you see that in kids around the world, but that's something that translated into even grown men that I haven't seen in other places. And it's really cliche. People say the less you have, the happier you are. I don't know if that's always true, but it felt that way when we were there, and that really surprised me.
It's kind of surprising how you see people and it stands true. Like I've noticed that as I travel too. It seems like people are genuinely happy no matter what they have.
Yeah, and then the other really cool stories that came out of that is, and this was a stolen idea from somebody else, that we found an old Polaroid picture or like Polaroid camera where the picture's printed out. Yep. And we would go to these, like I said, pretty remote villages in El Salvador, and you'd take a picture of the group or take a picture of a family and you'd hand it, and they didn't have any pictures of themselves or their families. And there was this one part where we took a picture and it was a group of kids that we were playing soccer or throwing a frisbee with. By the way, they'd never seen a frisbee before, and it just really blew their mind. Like, what the hell is that thing? But it was a group of maybe 10 boys or something like that. And we took pictures and gave them to each of the kids. And there were 2 or 3 that they look at it for 5 or 10 seconds and then start going crazy. And then somebody else did that. And another one did that. And I figured it out that they've never seen their own reflection or picture. So these kids are like looking at a picture and they're like, that's not me. That's not me. Like, oh my God, that's me. That's what I look like. Oh my God. And it's one of those things that I'd never thought about. And it's maybe my favorite travel story, of anywhere that I've been, just because that you never would think that a kid had never seen it. A 10-year-old kid didn't know what he looked like. But it makes sense. It adds up. They don't have mirrors in their houses or the houses they were at. I mean, I guess unless you catch a reflection of yourself in water, you're not going to know, but it's just something that's so foreign to me. And I never thought, I'd never thought about that at all.
Yeah, it's not something I would think about, but it's
no.
From every story I've read where people have done that on trips, it tends to be a thing. And I can't even begin to imagine what it was like just for any of those kids.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully. I mean, it's a self-indulgent story that I like to tell, but I think that it's one of those things that, for a family, at least, to have a family picture that they can throw on the wall and something that they see and treasure.
I'm sure it's very much treasured.
But no, that's one of my favorites.
That's very cool.
Again, I'd like to thank my guest, Travis Timmons from So How Was Your Trip podcast. You can find him on Instagram at So How Was Your Trip. I'll link both in the show notes. Again, I'd like to thank you for listening. You can find us on social media, Lost in Transit Podcast on Instagram, Lost in Transit PC on Twitter and Facebook, lostintransit.pc@gmail.com if you have any questions, comments, concerns, complaints. Until next time, get lost.